Alrighty, you guys ready to start 7.3? Woo! Yeah, super exciting. Well, this is actually a fun section. I like this section. We did a little bit of this in chapter 4, and I told you would see it again, and this is the again. So remember, use substitution. We had on the chapter 4 test, and then we had it again on the chapter 4 test corrections quiz. So you've actually seen it a couple times besides in class. So these are called equations in quadratic form, and we're going to use substitution. So quadratic in form means that the terms have to be in descending order, and the exponent on the middle term has to be half of the exponent on the first term, is 1/2 of 2, or I like to think of go backwards. The exponent on the middle term times 2 will give you the exponent on the leading term. Exponent on the middle term times 2 will give you the exponent on the leading term. This one, the exponent's 1/8, and if you type 1/8 times 2 in your calculator, you get 2/8, which is 1/4. So that's how we can tell something that's quadratic in form. There's 3 terms in descending order, and when you multiply the exponent of the middle term by 2, you get the exponent of the front term. And because they have 3 terms and fit this property, then that's going to allow us to be able to factor. So we get to use things that we can use on quadratics, even though some of them aren't quadratics. This isn't a quadratic. This is a 34th degree equation. This isn't a quadratic. It has fractional exponents. Now this one is leading power 2. But it allows us to use methods that we used on quadratics even when it's not. Like, what are factors of 8 that add to 6? 4 and 2. So I could do double bubble on this, and so on. So whatever, I don't know if you guys remember this when we were doing u substitution, whatever the variable part of the middle term is, that is going to be your u. So on this first one, u is x minus 1. On the second part, u is x to the 17th. So you just take the middle term's variable part, and that's what u is. On this third term, u is x to the 1/8. So it's never hard to find u. It's always just whatever the middle term is. And then this is always going to be 3u squared. This is going to be u squared because we said times 2 gives us that. And this is going to be u squared because we said times 2 gives us that. And then we factor. And then remember at the end, we reverse substitute and plug it back in. You can look back at your chapter 4 test corrections quiz or your chapter 4 test and kind of familiarize yourself with that. And then we solve with the new value in. So let's go through one of these. This one should be familiar. This was very similar to what we did in chapter 4. So the variable part of the center term is u. So u equals x plus 2. So this is going to be u squared minus 4u minus 21 equals 0. Because the leading coefficient is 1, we can factor with double bubble. So factors of 21 that differ by 4 are going to be 3 and 7. This says the signs are different. This says make the larger one negative. So positive 3, negative 7. So it would be u plus 3, u minus 7 equals 0. But then we have to keep in mind this is not a u problem. So now we have to plug x plus 2 back in order to finish solving. So this is called back substitution. So then we get, oh, I went ahead and solved first. Okay, never mind. So let's not do that yet. So then we say u plus 3 equals 0. So u equals negative 3. And then we say or u minus 7 equals 0. Add 7 to both sides. and we get u equals 7. So if a times b equals 0, either a is 0 or b is 0, then I plugged x plus 2 back in. So put x plus 2 in for that u, and I get x plus 2 equals negative 3. Put x plus 2 back in for that u, I get x plus 2 equals 7. Solve both of those, and you get the two answers, negative 5, positive 5, as your solution set. So that you have done all of those in chapter 4. We did 3 or 4 of them. It's the ones on the back with the fractional exponents and stuff that'll be a little bit new for you. Okay, so let's practice. So what is u going to be? Look at your middle term. The variable part of the middle term is u. So u is going to be negative 4x minus 8. And I would always draw a box, highlight it, whatever, to remind yourself you have to back substitute that before you finish the problem. So this is going to be 4x minus 8 is u squared plus 3u plus 2 equals 0. And then we just have a simple little double bubble problem. Factors of 2 that add to 3 are 2 and 1, all positive signs, so u plus 2, u plus 1 equals 0. If a times b equals 0, either a is 0 or b is 0. Solve these, and I get u equals negative 2, or u equals negative 1. But you look up and go, this has x's, not u's, so that's your hint. Oh yeah, I got to put negative 4x minus 8 back in place of those u's, because they don't want to know what x is. What u is. There aren't even u's in the problem. And then put negative 4x minus 8 back in for that. So you're just using your box and back substituting. So my two new equations are now going to be negative 4x minus 8 equals negative 2, or negative 4x minus 8 equals negative 1. So now that is where our two solutions are going to come from. Solve those two. Add 8, negative 4x equals 8 minus 2, 6. Divide by negative 4, divide by negative 4. X equals negative 3 halves. When we simplify it, divide by 2, negative 3 halves. Then solve the second one to get your second solution, and we're guaranteed two solutions. See the highest power, 2. So we know we don't stop till we get 2. And this will be negative 4x equals 7. X equals negative 7/4. So then I go up and say, there's my two solutions. So my solution set is negative 3 halves and negative 7/4. Right out of chapter 4. We did many problems like that in chapter 4. So hopefully you remember those. There were some of you that weren't using u substitution, that were foiling. I said, don't do that, because on this one, yes, you could have done that, but what are you going to do when you have fractional exponents or really big exponents like this and you don't know how to do u substitution? So that's why I encouraged everyone to make sure they did it for that section. Okay, let's go ahead and turn to the next page. So we have several more of these, all different formats. So I think pretty much the rest of these will not look familiar to you, at least not from chapter 4. But when you multiply this exponent 1/3 times 2, I get 2/3. When I multiply this exponent negative 1 by 2, I get negative 2. This exponent, remember, is 1/2. Square root of something means it's 1 over 2. So this is x to the 1/2. 1/2 times 2, double it, you get 1. And this is an exponent of 1. When you double it, you get 2. So they're all quadratic in form, which means once I do use substitution, all I have to do is factor to get my solutions. So first thing you have to decide is what u is, and it's always the variable part of the middle term. So I write u equals x to the 1/3. And this is going to come up later, but I just want to make sure, do you guys all remember this means cube root of 3? Do you all remember that? Cube root of 3. Okay, I'm getting tired. It's almost midnight. Cube root of x to the first, not cube root of 3. Okay, so this, remember, has to be u squared, because when you take this times 2, you get that variable. So if that's u, that has to be u squared minus 8u plus 15 equals 0. And this is why I love this section. I just took this ugly problem and look how pretty this one is. Double bubble. Factors of 15 that add to 8 are 3 and 5. Signs same, both negative. So remember, that always means same. So we can go straight to the bubbles. U minus 3, u minus 5 equals 0. And remember, you can check your factoring. These two added, negative 3 plus negative 5 should give you that. And these two multiplied should give you that. So you can always check if you feel like you're a little rusty. So if a times b equals 0, either a is 0 or b is 0, according to the zero factor property we learned in chapter 4. Whoops, skipped a term there. So that's going to leave us with u equals 3 or u equals 5. But remember, this problem is not given in u's, it's given in x's, so now we have to plug back in. So we see right there that u is x to the 1/3, so we need to plug it back in. And most students will look at that and go, I have no idea how to solve that. Well, you do, it's just not in familiar format. That's why I said you need to remember that 1/3 means cube root of x. And you did these on your last test. See, once you put it in this format, you go, oh yeah, I remember doing these. Cube root of x equals 5. So sometimes they're just not in the format you're used to, but now when you see this, you go, oh yeah, we learned to undo the index. So this one you would cube both sides. This one you would cube both sides. And that will give you your solutions. We had that on the bottom of page 3 on the last test. So those two cancel, and we get x equals 3 times 3 times 3, which is 27. Or these two undo each other. X equals 5 times 5 times 5, 125. So there are my two solutions, 27 and 125. And remember, cube roots don't have to be checked. Square roots do. So that's why I didn't need to check that one. They don't pick up extraneous solutions, the odd indices. Only the even indices do. Okay, we're going to get cut off on this next one, but let's go ahead and start on it. Can't waste good video time. So everybody wrote down the solutions, right? Okay, so let's decide what u is. Look at the variable in the middle term. So that's x to the negative 1. So that will be my u. And when I take that times 2, I get this. So that leaves me with 4u squared minus 5u plus 1 equals 0. So 4, this is my u squared minus 5u plus 1 equals